Right now, your phone, your clothes, your coffee beans, they all traveled inside the same kind of steel box, 20 feet or 40 feet. Identical corner posts, identical locking pins. Every cargo ship on Earth was designed around this one shape, and almost nobody asks why. Turns out, the man who invented that box had never worked on a ship in his life. He was a stubborn North Carolina trucker who hated port unions, and he spent the better part of 2 decades trying to skip the dock entirely. One bad day at a pier in 1937, and 20 years of refusing to let it go, is the reason why. To understand the box, you have to understand why Malcolm McLean was miserable in 1937. He was 23 years old, driving a truck full of cotton from North Carolina to Hoboken, New Jersey. He parked at the pier, and he waited. Dock workers climbed into his trailer, hoisted bales of cotton one at a time, carried them across the wharf, and stacked them in the hold of a ship. It took all day, every single bale by hand. McLean sat there watching his engine cost money while the longshoremen did work he knew could be done in minutes. He stared at his trailer the whole time and asked himself one question. Why take the cotton out of it at all? In the 1940s and 50s, this was how every port on Earth worked. Cotton, lumber, car parts, everything loaded by hand. It took as long to load a ship as the ships spent at sea, sometimes longer. A Pacific crossing might be 2 weeks at sea, followed by 3 whole weeks at the dock, waiting for cargo to come off. The longshoremen ran powerful unions. They controlled every box, every bale, every crate, and they controlled the speed. Stealing cargo was so common that shipping companies had a name for it: leakage. For every dollar of freight, as much as 20 cents vanished. The whole system was slow, expensive, violent, and nobody really thought it could change. McLean kept driving trucks. He got rich doing it. By 1955, he ran one of the largest trucking companies in America, 1,700 trucks, 37 terminals. Then he did something that made no sense to anybody. He sold the whole thing. He walked away from a fortune, bought a bankrupt oil tanker, and called it the Ideal X. On April 26, 1956, the Ideal X sailed out of Newark Harbor, carrying 58 aluminum containers bound for Houston. 5 days later, cargo that would have cost $5.86 per ton to handload cost 15.8 cents. The box had just dropped the price of shipping by 97%, and nobody in the shipping industry noticed. But here's where it got ugly. For the next 10 years, American ports went to war over Malcolm McLean's box. Longshoremen sabotaged equipment. Shipping companies lobbied Congress. Port authorities in New York, Boston, Philadelphia all fought to keep the old system alive, because the old system was where they lived, where they ate, where their fathers had worked. The box was a knife at the throat of 300,000 union jobs. The 1971 Chicago docks erupted in riots. The Brooklyn Longshoremen's Local held out until 1975. By the end of the decade, only a handful of American ports still hand-loaded cargo. The rest had surrendered to a metal cube McLean had drawn on a napkin in 1937. But McLean's box wasn't the final box. The final one, the one every cargo ship carries today, was born in a conference room in Geneva. Between 1965 and 1968, the International Organization for Standardization fought over dimensions. Every major shipping nation sent a delegation. Europeans wanted 8 feet wide. Americans wanted 10. The Japanese wanted neither. Beneath all the fighting, one constraint decided it: the length of an American truck trailer. Trailers in the 1960s maxed out at 40 feet on U.S. highways, so the container had to be 40 feet, or exactly half that, 20 feet. Those two numbers were locked in 1968, and every ship, truck, and train on Earth has adapted ever since. Once the box standardized, the cost of moving anything across the ocean fell through the floor. A shirt from Shanghai to Chicago in 1960 cost about $4 in shipping. By 2005, it cost 4 cents. 4 cents to move a shirt across the world. Containers made it cheaper to make a phone in Shenzhen and ship it to London than to make that same phone in London. That's how the global supply chain got built. It wasn't invented so much as unlocked. Today, 90% of all non-bulk cargo on Earth, every laptop, every sneaker, every coffee bean, every medical glove, rides in a descendant of that 1956 aluminum crate. 500 million container movements a year. There's one more thing the box did, and it's the part nobody likes to talk about. It killed the American waterfront city. For a century, Brooklyn was defined by its piers. San Francisco was defined by its piers. Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston, each had a working port that employed tens of thousands of families in the same neighborhoods for generations. Once the box arrived, those ports needed cranes and computers, not longshoremen. And once they didn't need longshoremen, they didn't need to be in the city anymore. The container ports moved 10 miles out to places like Newark and Oakland, where land was cheap and highways were wide. The old piers went quiet, and most of them never came back. Every pair of sneakers in your closet traveled in a McLean box. Every piece of fruit you bought this week, every screen you've ever touched. The modern world, the one where a kid in Ohio orders something on Tuesday and a factory in Shenzhen ships it Wednesday, and it lands in that kid's hand on Friday. That world does not exist without a stubborn North Carolina trucker who got angry at a pier in 1937. He wasn't trained as an engineer. He wasn't a logistics consultant. He didn't graduate from an elite school. He was a guy whose truck was wasting time, and he refused to accept it. And because he was cheap and stubborn and really didn't like paying longshoremen, he spent the next 20 years inventing the thing that now carries 90% of everything on Earth, the 40-foot steel box. The mundane, corrugated, painted over, stacked 5, high, barely, noticed, barely remarkable steel box. If you've ever stood at a port and watched one of these ships pull in, you were watching the most consequential shape of the 20th century. Not the rocket, not the transistor, not the moon lander. A welded metal cube drawn by an angry truck driver in 1937, signed into global law in a conference room in 1968. Stacked to the horizon now, everywhere humans trade with each other. That's one of them. There's a whole channel full of reasons just like this. Quiet things you never once thought to question. Subscribe so the next one finds you first.